Hello everyone. Welcome back to another episode of our entitled parents. In today's episode, EM calls the cops when I wouldn't give any steak to her son. AITA for no longer letting my mom have a relationship with her only grandchild? Left her kid alone in a bookstore for hours. Thought it was totally normal. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. EM calls the cops when I wouldn't give any steak to her son. This happened maybe about a year ago, before the whole pandemic started. The weather had been nice, and I had just gotten some sirloin steaks. I haven't used my grill since the previous year, so I decided now would be a good time to try it out. For a few days, a group of construction workers had been busy working on a new house. It's built now, and it's pretty nice. Way too expensive for me though. But it had been hot and or rainy almost the entire duration of the build, and they were working their asses off the whole way through. So I decided to be nice, and after going over to the site, I yelled for them to come get some free food when they went on break. They were incredibly grateful. There were about 5 workers present, and 4 of them showed up for steak while the other passed. I had enough for everyone, including one for me, and we had a nice time chatting and getting to know one another. One was a veteran of the Marines back in the early 80s. He's friends with my grandma now. One was even related to the sheriff of our county. Anyway, amid the conversation, we heard an "excuse me" from the other side of the fence. My neighbor is this middle-aged woman with a super freaky son. He was this stoner influencer who loved to go on social media and post about his fetish for pot, and lived off his mother's paycheck every week while living on her couch. He was also in his mid-30s. There she was, on the other side of the fence. EM, entitled mom. GAK, grown kid. CW1/2, construction worker 1 and 2. P, police officer. EM, my son was wondering if he can have some steak too. Me, sorry, I don't have any left. M, but you have enough for all of them. Me, yeah, I do. If he wanted some, he should have came earlier. M, no, you should have bought enough for everyone. CW1, look lady, this guy was nice enough to cook us. EM, don't you have work you should be doing? CW2, we're on lunch, ma'am. She soon left in a huff, but not before shouting that she was calling the police. I was the only one who heard that, I think, so I asked the relative of the sheriff if there was really anything the police would arrest me for. Of course, he said no. In his words, there are no laws against not sharing. I asked if we should tell her that, and he again said no. Again in his words, it would be the most fun they've had on the job ever since they started building that house. Note, I actually did have an extra steak. I was saving it for later. Sure enough, after the construction workers went back to the site, who's to show up but a police officer? No lights, so it's a non-emergency, but he parked right outside EM's house. Both her and GAK walked out and greet P. I walked out on my own lawn, and EM pointed straight at me. I can't quite remember everything said here, but she was accusing me of discrimination because I left her 30-ish-year-old little boy out of our little steak party. I swear, it was like a kindergarten lunch. P obviously shook it off, warned her to not get the police involved in something so ridiculous again, and started to leave. But I said, "Me, wait. Officer, are you hungry?" P, well, I haven't had lunch yet. Why? Me, may I offer you a steak? M, I knew it. You do have more steak. I demand you give it to my son now. P, and I demand you both go back into your house before I arrest you for disturbing the peace and, possibly, harassment. EM, B, but you can't do that. He can't do that. Tell him, GAK. GAK, I just wanted some steak. M, officer, You have to do something about this. This man is performing a hate crime on my son." We both actually laughed. He said something along the lines of "have a good day," and I let him into my backyard. I had to give him the steak raw, since he had to go back on his patrol, but we had a good laugh. EM and GAK finally went back into their house, and every time that I see them nowadays, she scowls at me, while GAK just pays no attention. I occasionally see that same officer from time to time, and every time I see him, he asks the same thing. "Did you remember to share today?" "Officer, this man won't feed my 30-year-old little boy who's too lazy to work. Arrest him." "I'm an entitled mom. Why can't I have everything I want for free, huh? How dare you feed people who work? Her lazy son who has no job and sleeps for a living deserves it more than those men who sweat. How dare you? People are so dumb. How entitled can you be?" She sounds like my 2-year-old during a meltdown. So freaking childish. Never got taught that the world does not, in fact, revolve around her. OMG. SMH. Calling 911 is so bad in my area. The city is considering making non-emergency calls to 911 a misdemeanor. I saw the news article sometime last year, so I do remember the specifics. I think it was going to be officer discretion. You're telling us that the police officer took a raw steak and went back on patrol? What did he do? Drove around with a raw steak in the front seat. This makes zero sense. Steak is expensive. He probably accepted it out of courtesy. It's nice to get a free meal every now and again. If I believed a word of this, I'd say be out there every weekend grilling up a couple of steaks. One for you and one to piss them off. You could reheat the second one later. AITA for no longer letting my mom have a relationship with her only grandchild? I, 25F, have a daughter, 7M, who has recently been diagnosed with epilepsy. She is the first grandchild on both sides of the family, so everyone is wanting to meet her. Well, the weekend that my extended family was in town, staying at my mom's house, she got pneumonia, and anytime she has a fever, she's at risk of having a seizure. So when they asked to come over, I said no. I don't want anyone around her who's been traveling. My mom wasn't happy with that answer and said she would check in later. She later texted me asking again. I say no and that my answer wasn't going to change. Well, later in the day, my daughter has a seizure, and when that happens, she is barely able to breathe, so I have to have 911 ready just in case things get worse. So I am literally in the middle of assisting my child when there's a knock on my door. I ignore it and continue assisting my baby. Then my phone starts ringing non-stop, my mother. I ignore it, of course, until my daughter thankfully pulls out of it. After 15 minutes, I finally answer the phone, angry, and tell her that my daughter was having a seizure. Her response, "Oh, but she's better? Can you at least show her us through the window?" I tell her no and to leave. She calls me selfish and tells me that maybe I need to ask God for forgiveness for having her out of wedlock, and maybe that's why she's been having seizures. I had no words, so I just hung up and blocked her. A few days have passed and my dad has reached out, saying I'm overreacting and I need to allow my mom to see her only grandchild. Ada? Firstly, I hope you and your daughter are doing well. That's what matters here. Secondly, your mother isn't entitled to your child. Unless, of course, there are grandparent rights laws where you live. You are the mother. You make the rules. I'll bet she told you something along those lines growing up. Well, now it's her turn to abide by your rules. Third, she blames your child's serious health condition on you just living life, but in a way she obviously disapproves of. She owes you a huge apology before I'd let her see the baby if it were me. That kind of hate, and yes, judgment like that is hate, is unacceptable. Set your boundaries and stick to them. Once she asks you for your forgiveness, genuinely, then move on, until such time as another boundary is crossed. I suspect this is a lesson that will need repeating. Raising parents sucks. It's way harder than kids. JFC, NTA at all. Baby had a seizure. She still wanted to see her, and to add insult to injury, had the audacity to blame the epilepsy on the fact that you and baby's dad aren't married? Absolutely disgusting, and not someone who should be around a child she clearly doesn't think much of. We had literally just gotten out of the PICU after 5 days of seizures. And my husband and I are married now. I literally just got pregnant while engaged, and she has never left me forget. Likey, she crossed so many boundaries was just the straw that broke the camel's back. I'm sorry for your troubles. Personally, I wouldn't ever let such a selfish, judgmental, ugly woman near my child. F that. Your mom has no right to your child. After the remark about an unwed mother and asking God for forgiveness may be the reason your daughter is having seizures, she is blocked forever. You need to cut them out of your life. None of that is okay and will not stop. Left her kid alone in a bookstore for hours. Thought it was totally normal. This here happened a while ago. I recently got reminded of it after meeting an old friend. Thought I'd share this story because I know after 13 years in retail/customer services that many people would think that what she did was okay. Back when I worked in a bookstore in a shopping mall, there was this little girl, maybe 5 to 6 years old, just sitting quietly in a corner, looking at the pictures of a book. At that moment, we had just noticed her because she was kind of hidden, tucked in a corner, and was totally silent. We asked where her parents were. She said her mommy was in the shop next to ours and told her to wait in the bookstore. We asked if she knew how long it had been, and she pointed to the hands of clock. Where they had been when her mom left, it had been nearly 3 hours. I still can't believe that kid stayed quiet for so long, and I'm still kicking myself for not noticing her sooner. We took her to the mall security and they started looking for the mom. That brainless woman was in another mall next to ours, 3 smaller shopping malls on the same street next to each other. The mall security were shocked. One of them was a dad and went to get the kid biscuits and an apple juice. He knew right away she was really hungry after 3 hours all alone waiting. I never forgot how happy she was munching on those chocolate chips cookies and sipping her juice box. They called the police and child protection services. Me and my colleague waited with the kid. We actually had brought the book with us for some reason, so she wouldn't be too scared. When the mom finally arrived, I swear, she did not understood at all why what she did was wrong and got pissed at us for going to security. She argued that her daughter was safe in our store and that she knew to not cause trouble. That got the police suspicious because the kid was indeed very quiet and eerily well behaved. Looking back, it's kind of obvious that she was scared into being this quiet and calm child. The mother's justification was basically that since our store was selling books for kids and some toys, we were essentially babysitters, and that we were the ones in the wrong for not wanting to do our job and watch the children. Needless to say, the cops were just totally done with her and took her to the police station. The kid went with child protection services. The mom was kicking and screaming, threatening to sue us for slander and defamation. Of course that never happened, but I hope that this little girl is now with better people, that she is now with people who love and cherish her. What really scares me is that poor baby was so quiet that you didn't know she was there for 3 hours. It would have been so easy for someone to come along and persuade her to leave with them. I've always rationally known that it's not a good thing, and I've never done it to my own kid, but I think this is the moment it really hit me that my mom would have gotten in so much trouble with CPS too. Yeesh. Yeah, this was something my mom did too, but it was the 80s. I was a little bit older, maybe 7+, and I wanted her to LOL. I would much rather read a new Babysitter's Club book than watch my mom look at towels and JCPenney's. The people who think this is okay to do to a 4-year-old are deranged. I was a very quiet and well-behaved kid. You could give me orders and trust they will be followed, like staying in a bookstore for hours. Surprise, surprise, I was also emotionally abused. I don't know, I was always so proud of how well I followed orders. I only realized the abuse when I turned 35 and had my own child. Started therapy and all. It is strange to read this while feeling like the child's perspective. I think you did the right thing. My mom used to work in the book section of a multimedia store. The children's section had an area where kids could sit and read that was in clear view of the book section desk, which always had at least 2 people working. It wasn't unusual for people to have their kids sit there with a book for 20 minutes or so while they were shopping, and a lot of parents asked if that was okay. I guarantee that if mom or any of her coworkers saw a child there for more than 20 to 30 minutes, especially if they hadn't seen the parent, they would have been paging the parent. They were especially careful after an incident where the parent somehow forgot they brought the kid with them and left the store. Thankfully, the girl was old enough to know her phone number. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and we will see you in the next video.